I promise you, the writers hate Colin more than the internet does. Was part 1 being written in a field of daisies, and then part 2 was written in the pits of... Okay.
There's no romance. What's the point? Just kidding. Maybe.
Darling,
Yo, it's Anne, aka Antagonist. Welcome back to my channel, where we talk all things books, movie, and TV with an emphasis on romance. We're talking Bridgerton Season 3 today. Now that all the parts have come out, we've had time to reflect, people have had time to calm down, we can do a total deep dive on this season. Going into the season, I was actually really excited. A lot of the marketing, press tour, the trailer, got me hyped for the season, so I was ready. But now that I've seen everything, personally for me, this season was a flop. That's my opinion, okay? Everything felt extremely rushed and contrived, and there were so many different things going on that we were never really allowed to sit in the emotions and tensions and conflict before we were moving on to something else, often less interesting than the main conflict. So, let's do a deep dive into Bridgerton Season 3 and what went wrong. I'm just going to jump right into the main event, or what was supposed to be the main event, and that's Polin. Now, I will preface this by saying that when it comes to romance, especially Bridgerton, there is no right or wrong couple to ship. Like 60% of if you enjoy a couple or not comes down to your personal taste. Every single Bridgerton couple has its strengths and flaws, and you just have to decide on what matters most to you and what you can overlook. Some people value sizzling chemistry, others value deep connection. Sometimes it's just down to the trope that the couple fits in. I am a big Friends to Lovers fan. Big fan. Huge. A Nikki fan. Just pull up on the Sri Lanka, okay? But I do think because Friends to Lovers is such a staple and go-to trope for me, I'm almost harsher on Friends to Lovers pairings because I've seen so many different versions and iterations of the trope, so I'm not easily impressed. But I also have to say that girl falls first, especially when the girl has been pining since the dawn of time, is never in my ministry. It's never in my cup of tea. I don't like watching women suffer. I don't. Especially when we're in our soft boy era. So Polin had a lot going against it coming into the season, but I was really hopeful because the love coach trope is one of my favorite tropes ever. And I was so open to having my mind changed because Shondaland had done it so many times before. I hated Anthony in the first season, and now Anthony's my favorite Bridgerton. I was so prepared not to care about Queen Charlotte like a little bit. And now I'm the official representative of that spinoff. Like, I was completely ready to have my mind changed because it had been so many times before. And unfortunately, that did not happen, not in the slightest. The Polin romance fell flat for me, and I think I can boil it down to 3 reasons why. The first being the love coach trope ending way too soon. In part 1, I did think that the Polin romance was rushed, and it's not because it was done in a short amount of time. I think doing a romance arc is possible in 4 episodes. They essentially did that with Simon and Daphne in season 1. But I think why it felt rushed is because Polin ended the love coach trope way too soon. Way too soon. We only had 1 episode, and even within that episode, we had like 4 one-minute scenes, and then we were done. Huh? I'm sorry, did the love coach trope have somewhere to be? Was it late to an appointment? Like, Simon and Daphne had the fake dating trope for double the amount of time, but that allowed for great excuse for the characters to spend a lot of time together, and we were able to see them on screen a lot more. And the love coach trope is such an interesting and funny dynamic. I don't know why you'd want to stifle it after 1 single episode, especially because after episode 2, Colin and Penelope barely talk. Boo! The second issue was there was just not enough Polin in this season. We spent way too much time on everything else but the main couple. The subplots took way too much meaningful screen time from Penelope and Colin to the point where they felt like side characters in their own season. Which is crazy because out of all the couples, Pen and Colin have the most lore, history, and craziness to work through. The lore that you've been building for 2 seasons. That's interesting. Mondrich's not knowing what to do with their newfound popularity, uninteresting. Benedict hooking up with white woman number 335, not interesting. And the third reason that Polin didn't work was Colin. Bro, the writers hate Colin more than the internet does. I promise you, the writers hate Colin more than the internet does. We all knew going into the season that Penelope was going to be more of the star and the lead, which is cool because she's one of the most compelling characters on this show. But the way that Colin's characterization was fumbled, brother, ugh. I'm going to go into more depth about each character and their arcs later on in this video, so I'll talk more about Colin's arc then. But all in all, Colin was not well developed, and that really hindered the romance arc as well. And we've seen this phenomenon a lot in media where you have a girl boss, strong female character, and often the male love interest or male characters are diminished as a form of empowerment, which makes zero sense. Like, how does making one person in a couple lackluster empower the other? That person's still gonna be with them, and instead you've made your audience not invested in the couple now. All in all the reasons I listed made the polin romance lackluster, and a lot of their sweet and cute moments felt unearned because they didn't give the proper time and care to the romance. This season, it felt like production was on crack. It must be crack, because what was this? What was this? There were so many weird editing choices done this season. And I am by no means a film or editing expert, so the fact that I noticed is a problem. Like, the editing in the hot air balloon scene was atrocious, abysmal, scary. We couldn't even tell what they wanted us to take away from that scene. We have a bunch of disjointed, disorienting shots, and then we just cut to Colin being embraced by the general public and mewing into the general distance. Or like, this specific scene really pissed me off, and it's so insignificant, but it shows, just the sloppiness. The scene with Cressida where she's in her mom's room trying to write a whistle down. Why have us hear everything that her dad is yelling in the other room, slam the door, then cut to Cressida's mom entering the room to tell Cressida exactly what we just overheard? Have Cressida's dad yell obscenities, then he slams the door, cut to Cressida's mom coming into the room and telling her, your dad pulled your dowry because he got kicked out of his club. Why are we wasting time? We do not have time to waste on this show. Every second counts because y'all want to put 11 different subplots in 8 episodes. And do not get me started on the ridiculousness that was the editing of Benedict's threesome that lasted 40 days and 40 nights. I can't. It was so unserious. It was like a fever dream. I also thought the dialogue during the more emotional moments was lacking. I really value the flowery and beautiful imagery-inducing language that is prevalent in a lot of the Bridgerton shows. And I felt like that wasn't really the case this season. Like, a lot of the lines they were saying gave me like, you've seen an iPhone before. Like, there wasn't a catchphrase this season. I don't know, book fans, maybe let me know in the comments if there was like a quote that you really love from the book that you wish was in there. Or maybe you can even tell me, maybe they did use a quote from the book that I missed, but it just felt like there was no bane of my existence or I burned for you, even though I know that I burned for you comes from Anthony's book. That's fine. I don't care. Steal more from the other books. I just wanted a iconic line, and I don't feel like we got that this season. Friends to lovers, I feel like it's so easy to have beautiful, quoted, elaborate moments. So why do I have nothing to show for it? The music and a lot of the needle drop moments felt really understated. I will say that I think in part 2, there was a big improvement when it came to the music and the way that the needle drops were used, versus in part 1, a lot of them were misplaced and too understated for us to even notice. Like, the way I completely missed Jealous by Nick Jonas when it was playing because it was just like off in the background, or they just like throw in a song like how they did that BTS song for 2 milliseconds. Why are you paying top dollar for music licensing only to flop? Let's get into the characters. First, starting with the star of the show, and that is Miss Penelope Featherington. Probably the first positive thing I'm going to say. For the most part, I enjoyed Penelope's character arc, especially when it came to her family. The Featherington plot was hands down the best part of the season. I actually have no notes. They were the most fleshed out scenes, fleshed out characters, most meaningful scenes, for sure. Like, all my favorite scenes from season 3 are Featherington interactions. And as always, Penelope is an interesting character to watch on screen, especially this season. There were a lot of comedic moments that lightened the mood, and I think that has a lot to do with the acting chops and comedic timing of Miss Nicola Coughlan. So I think that really, really played well this season. And ultimately, Penelope got her happy ending. A little too happy, if you ask me. Like, she wasn't really held accountable for anything, considering all the havocs and stakes and tension they built over 3 seasons only to like pepper it out at the end. It's fine, even though a lot of it felt unearned. Like, that's a problem that Bridgerton has in general, where they build a lot of stakes and tension and then they just like fizzle out like a balloon deflating. Like, they don't actually, do anything interesting with that. So that was expected, and I had anticipated that before the season began. So I was just like, all right. One thing I didn't love that they introduced to Penelope's arc this season is what I call the girl boss and yassification of Lady Whistledown. They really tried to nail us over the head with themes of feminism and essentially Pen being a woman in STEM when it came to Lady Whistledown. But it's hard for me to see it that way when Pen's column historically has teared down other women and has really disproportionately affected the lives of women in terrible ways. Especially in episode 7 when Pen goes on a monologue to Colin after their wedding breakfast, it fell really flat for me. Like, Pen, no one's stopping you from writing. Like, you could write a book. It's just they're stopping you from being whistled down because it's under the threat of the queen. Like, it felt super jarring for her to be like, I'm a woman and you as a man don't understand, blah, 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 when she's using the protection of the Bridgerton name to be stable while also doing something that could really hinder their name and cause them danger. Like, you can't play the victim card in that sense when you are using patriarchy to your advantage while also doing things that are almost hindering that system. It doesn't really vibe with me, especially when there were easier solutions. Like, Jane Austen existed, babes. You could have been writing books, I don't know. It felt really weird, especially in contrast to all of these scenes with Portia, where I felt like a lot of the conversations were nuanced and had a lot more depth to it and had a lot more self-awareness. Like, especially that scene where Portia's talking to Penelope about security and how she married for security, and that's something that the society obliges women to do. The other scene is where Pen and Portia are fighting about the different things that they have done, and Portia says, well, we both did the best that we could with the cards that society has dealt us. And then she thinks again and she goes, oh, well, there were probably better ways, but at the time I could not see them. Like, that's nuance, that's deep, that's self-aware. That also lets the audience come to the conclusion they want to, rather than, preaching and shoving down a girl boss narrative that doesn't really fit in the moment that you're trying to make. And last thing, I just feel like such a negative Nelly. I really hate being negative, but I just need to get all my things out. I'll speak on this briefly. I know this is probably an unpopular opinion. I did think they went too far with Penelope's makeover this season. Having new dresses is one thing because, Pen's previous dresses were ill-fitting and had gaudy colors, and that's different, changing your wardrobe. But the caked face, hair laid, lashes, and constant pouting, it was too much. What kind of message are we trying to send here? Nicola Coughlan is a beautiful woman, gorgiana, okay? With the dresses and the lashes and the cinched waist, heavy beat makeup, it almost felt like they were trying to prove it to us. And I understand people are extremely harsh and biased towards people in bigger bodies. She's mid-sized, but it just shows that Hollywood has impossible beauty standards. But I feel like in that overcorrection, the show has somehow played in to the impossible beauty standards that women are held to, especially those in bigger bodies. And I don't know. And it almost undermines Colin's romantic arc because in certain angles, it can feel like he only came around because Pen discovered contour in Fashion Nova. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more creativity from the hair and makeup department, especially when it came to that, because I think it's important to see what kind of messages we are sending. There's been a lot of discourse online about Colin, and specifically after part 1, where it felt that Colin had given much of the general public, myself included, the ick. And while it did get better in part 2, I've seen a lot of back and forth about if it was purposeful and what they were trying to do with the appeal of his character. I have yet to find a compelling argument for why they went about things the way they did. Can you tell me what the purpose is of making Colin icky and uncharming? Especially when it's possible and more rewarding to show that he is charming and likable, and also show that he's living a double life. It's not Colin being bad at flirting that lets me know it's inauthentic. It's the fact that he's repeating it to multiple women that lets me know he's putting on a player facade. And canonically, the argument of he's supposed to be uncharming and bad at flirting because it's showing he's being fake doesn't even make sense, because we're constantly told throughout the season about how charming Colin is. So stop telling us and show us. Show Colin using his great charm skills to charm all the women in the ton, and then when he's with Pen, his mask slips off, like that really cute scene under the willow tree in episode 3. Like, that's way more rewarding and way more of a signal to the audience that when he's with Pen, he's different. Like, you need to let your audience see Colin be competent and succeed at something. And it felt like a theme throughout the season that they refused to let Colin be competent in just about anything. Regardless of if you liked Colin's characterization or not this season, I think most people can agree that he was sidelined throughout the episodes. There were full stretches of time, especially in part 2, where Colin did not speak, we did not see him, the man was gone, like a ghost. And his character motivations were not put at the forefront or explained. It's like Colin's character and his motivations just changed to serve the plot whenever they feel like it. Like in episode 1, Colin swears vengeance on Lady Whistledown because of what she did to Eloise and Marina. Then Cressida is revealed as Lady Whistledown, and he just doesn't care anymore. Which makes no sense to me, because not only has Cressida supposedly done terrible things to the people you love, but she's been bullying your fiance for time. So why wouldn't Colin go after her? But let's just say, oh, he's so young and in love and engagement, he can't care anymore. But then he finds out that Pen's Lady Whistledown and he's mad again, which I would understand because there's so many compelling reasons why he should be angry about Pen being Lady Whistledown. His anger would be justified and compelling if it was because his fiance and friend had been lying to him for years, or because he feels like he doesn't know or truly understand Pen anymore, or the dozens of terrible things she said about his family. But instead, all those compelling reasons for Colin to be mad are thrown out the window, and we're told that Colin is upset about the one comment she made at the beginning of the season about calling him fake, which was nothing. And then we're thrown a half-baked jealousy plotline at the end of the season to serve the girl boss narrative. Like, Colin, you just started writing fan fiction 2 days ago, Cry Me a River. And there's a big show don't tell issue when it comes to Colin's character. We're told he's charming. We're told he always puts others first. We're told he's jealous. But not much groundwork is given to actually display these things, to show them. And it's so strange how the show decides to be explicit and overt with a lot of Colin's more surface level attributes, but when it comes to the more meaningful and deep parts of his character, that's when they choose to have the most subtle of subtleties to showcase that, which makes everything feel unearned when it comes to his character arc. And even some of the most iconic staples of Bridgerton are undermined by Colin's absence in his own season. Like, Violet is always there at the end of the season to give her kids an encouraging speech at the final hour. They did have that aspect in part 1 when she spoke to Colin about Penelope's engagement, but then she just disappears for the second half. Pen literally sends a letter to Violet about being Lady Whistledown, and Colin says, "Let's talk," and then we don't see that scene. What? Why aren't we seeing Violet talking to Colin to explain why he's able to reconcile his feelings, so by the end, we're not feeling whiplash for when he comes around? Meanwhile, in other seasons, Violet has multiple conversations with her children during the different stages of their relationship. And even within season 3, Violet has multiple conversations about relationships with Francesca, not with Colin. Not with the star of the season, allegedly. Like, Colin was done dirty. Y'all really have me defending a privileged boy who won't stop talking about his gap year in Greece. I can't. We'll talk about Eloise. Girl, I don't have much for her. I was enjoying her characterization up until she just like ditches Cressida. Then I was about ready to cut her off like she did Cressida. Cause what was that? I actually liked the antagonistic role she played with the Colin and Penelope triangle there. I think that was really good character dynamics and you could understand each character's motivations. But the way she rejected Cressida so quickly made no sense to me and lacked so much empathy. Like, I couldn't believe my eyes. I am glad that her and Pen are friends again, and I think their arc was amongst the more interesting things throughout this entire season. Like, girl, they gave more angst than anybody else in that season. Longing, angst, those two had it down. But overall, Eloise, I hope you learned something in Scotland, because I cannot with this regressive character growth. Like, please. Now, I never thought I would say this, but justice for Cressida. Justice for Cressida. Why did we spend all of this time, all this screen time, redeeming her character only for y'all to regress in like an episode or two and then send her off into exile by the end? Like, if you deep it, Pen and Cressida were actually paralleling each other, as in two female characters who had done suspicious things to survive because of the circumstances that society had put them in. But why is one given literally everything she's ever dreamed of and then the other one is put in prison jail? Like, what's going on? I don't understand what message that was trying to send. I don't understand what they were trying to do with her character arc. I understand they needed her to be the villain of the second half, but it's just like all the things you did in the first half doesn't really make sense now. Why make her redeemable if you're gonna make her the villain of the second half? Again, we're taking away precious screen time that could have been used more efficiently. I don't understand. And also, where was Lord Debling? What's going on? Was he looking for a wife? Why is Cressida not the wife? Why make Cressida and him have a little bit of connection only for y'all to throw him away? Was part one being written in a field of daisies and then part two was written in the pits of... Okay. Francesca. I really enjoyed Francesca. I relate to her in a lot of ways. And I thought her romance with John was so cute. I love Johnny Boy. That's my guy. Super cute. Was really upset that they undermined the lessons and arc that we had gone through this entire season in the last 5 seconds of the finale episode. Again, it's like when I see the whole picture, I'm like, why did we spend all this time if y'all were going to do that at the end? Why spend so much time letting us fall in love with John, seeing their relationship growth, the ups and downs, only for y'all to be like, oh, but like it doesn't mean anything. I haven't read most of the Bridgerton books. The only books I've read are Anthony's and Francesca's. So I already know where they were supposed to be going with Francesca's plot, and I'm really upset by the direction they seem to be going in with Michaela being introduced so early on. Right now, it seems like it's going to be an affair/love triangle thing. I pray that that's not the case, because I don't like that idea at all. I also don't want to speak too much, but I'm just going to say the way that they have treated dark-skinned Black women on the show is suspect, to say the least. And the pattern continues with Michaela, so that's all I have to say. On to Mama Bridgerton and Lady Danbury, I'll put them together. I actually think Violet was underutilized when it came to her kids this season. She was mostly stuck at the hip with Franny, which I really enjoyed those scenes, but I wish she would have had more time with the other kids, like I mentioned before. I really enjoy the friendship between Lady Danbury and her. I thought that was precious, and those scenes were some of my favorite, especially the scene where Lady Danbury kind of gives her approval for Violet being with her brother, but she says, like, I'm picking you over him. I thought that was so sweet. And I like that their friendship has explicitly been stated as not transactional. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I do have an unpopular opinion. Lady Danbury's brother, although that man is fine, I wasn't really interested in his plot. Like, I felt like the plot between him and Lady Danbury was really rushed. There's a lot of trauma there that probably should have been unpacked much more eloquently. And I also think, another unpopular opinion, I think him and Lady Violet have negative chemistry. Like, I don't see it. He just comes into rooms and kind of proclaims that he's there, like, I'm here and I'm charming. Ha ha ha. It's not cute to me. It's kind of just like half-baked. The Featheringtons. This is the only part that I have no criticisms for. I thought Portia was so good this season. Polly Walker is always great when it comes to playing Portia, but I felt like in this season, There was so much nuance and depth to her character arc, and I loved it. I was always a Portia apologist. Like, I could see why in a society that she was in, she would resort to the ways that she was resorting to. And I honestly think if she was on any other show other than Bridgerton, we wouldn't be mad at her. We would be like, yeah, that's kind of how moms are in this century. So I feel like because we're looking at it from a 21st century lens, she comes off a lot worse than she is, especially in contrast to Violet. But I like that we were able to get more explanation and realness from her, especially towards Penelope, who she has been neglectful to, and that's definitely fair. So I thought that was well done, and I love that they actually drew parallels between the two of them, because I always felt that, you know, their schemy ways were one and the same, especially because Portia is quite intelligent and Penelope is even more so. So I felt like really wanted them to come together and see eye to eye, and they did just that. I also really loved the comedic relief that the Featheringtons were during part 1. I felt that was so well done. They had the most iconic lines. Chef's kiss. I have no notes. And the award to dumbest subplots go to the Mondriches and Benedict. The Mondriches were checking off the diversity box. That's not enough. Actually do something with them. I don't know. Fix it. I don't understand. I like that these actors are being employed. That I will always cheer for. But why were they giving nothing? Go ahead, girl, give us nothing. Y'all need to go back to the drawing board and figure it out. And they've been in other seasons before and had somewhat of a more significant plot line. This time it really felt like they were just walking in circles, hitting against the wall. Like Benedict, sorry, a little bit of a waste of time. I'm sorry. And I can't lie, I'm really side-eyeing the new showrunner for the way that they did Benedict this season. Like, the man was just flouncing around, doing nothing. This ain't it. I'm glad that he opened up, explored his sexuality, but it felt like you had way better and more compelling ways to do that earlier on. And then in the 3rd season, now that you've realized that you've messed up, you did it in the most uninteresting and boring way. Like, how do you have me annoyed at the sight of Benedict? And also with the way they edited his scenes, literally being spliced right after more interesting, like, Penelope and Colin scenes, made me annoyed at the sight of him. How have you made me annoyed at Benedict? Like, Benny was up, but now, after the season, I'm irritated. Weirdly enough, although the press tours went on and on about how steamy the season would be and how it's like the most romantic, I found that to be really false, actually. In fact, I'd say people who are less a fan of romance plots and, you know, enjoy more comedy, plot-driven, like interpersonal relationships and empowerment stories will really enjoy this season. I don't know if you could tell, I'm not one of those people, specifically when it comes to Bridgerton. When it comes to Bridgerton, what I think they do best and what I'm invested in is the romance, the character work, and family dynamics. But you know what? All in all, I've been blessed. I've enjoyed every season until this one. So if this is not my favorite, it's not the end of the world. It will be somebody else's favorite. If I had to give the season a rating, I would still give it a 3 out of 5. Not my cup of tea, but it's not the worst piece of fiction I've seen. Not the worst, but definitely not the best. Okay, guys, thank you for watching this video of me basically dunking on season 3. I do feel bad. Like, I don't like to hate things. That's not what I enjoy. But I had to come on here and tell you what I felt about the season. Let me know what you thought. If you had the same issues, if you agree or disagree with me, just make sure to be respectful. At the end of the day, it's just a TV show. It's all good. It's all love. Literally, this is romance. All right. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.
Darling.